talked about a decider, but then you can see the points on offer. Prada on 3, Emirates Team New Zealand on 4, and it all comes down to the wire here.
Again, looking at packages, so nobody has opted for that code 0 here, Pete. Everybody's sailing around with their jibs, but they look happy. I wonder, we were sort of seeing Ineos Team UK in 6.5 knots of pressure at the top of the course. Down the bottom, I wonder if there's more pressure and the jibs are paying off. This could be a really interesting match. And that breeze is starting to die at the top of the course and move down.
Well, apart from anything else, it's just a really good test for both teams to figure out how do you sail in such light air. We're coming up to the start. There's only, what, 1 minute and 7 seconds to go. Right now, Emirates Team New Zealand are showing 7 knots of wind speed.
Luna Rossa Prada jibing. They're on starboard. They're coming back. Are they going to attack him? I think you can attack him here. Emirates Team New Zealand look vulnerable there. They're on port. They're the giveaway boat in this situation. They'll probably tack before Luna Rossa Prada and head for that leeward end of the start line.
Now, when they put both foils down, I'd call that a slow foiling mode. So you put both down, create a bit more drag, but still on the foil. So when the gun goes, you harden up and lift the foil up and you're off. So Emirates Team New Zealand are having to avoid. They are the giveaway boat as they bring the bow. Well, attacked, they're both on starboard. Can Emirates Team New Zealand get up on the foils from that position? Just.
No dramas, 16 seconds to go. Luna Rossa Prada with the wide right start. To me, they're in the comfort zone here. They're happy. They're going to drag it out. 5 seconds to go. Emirates Team New Zealand is not laying the pin end of the line. That's left on your screen. Jimmy Spittle hunting him down now. He's coming at him. He's pointing his bow at him. He's forgotten about the start. He's trying to stitch him up.
Jimmy Spittle is chasing Pete Burling into what's called coffin corner. There's no escape there from Burling unless he's got something up his sleeve now.
Yeah, what
Jimmy Spittle's gone. He has pulled the trigger. Pete Burling was chased away, and Jimmy Spittle has put an alpha move on Pete Burling.
Yeah, good move by Luna Rossa, pushing the action right down to the pin-end line to the extent that New Zealand had to not go to the line and then tack away. They were required to keep clear, and that was an absolute clean-out by Spittle against Emirates Team New Zealand.
Not only that, the boys on Emirates Team New Zealand, they are light. They've had to put the bow down massively to build speed, and they're just giving away distance right now as Luna Rossa Prada win the start and sail off into the sunset right now.
190 metres straight away for Jimmy Spittle. Still generating great pace, these two boats. Look at that. Even though the wind has eased off, around 7, 8 knots at the moment, they're both pulling huge speeds going upwind on this first leg.
Well, what the deal was really was that Emirates Team New Zealand, they had to tack, they had to do that late manoeuvre, and then Spittle just hunted them down to the pin end to the extent that they couldn't get round the mark, and Spittle just picked his moment so he could harden up, go through the line. New Zealand had an extra tack to do, so they did 2 extra tacks that Luna Rossa didn't need to do in the last minute. See how it looks now.
200-metre lead. Luna Rossa Prada up to windward. They're happy. They're on the same tack, going to the same bit of water, the same bit of pressure. They should be able to defend that lead from here, somewhere close to the top of the leg. If I was Emirates Team New Zealand,
don't worry about the runner.
You've got 2 options. You're either going to attack or you're going to keep it simple. Keep it calm. Let's just wait for them to make a mistake and try to close this up.
We're talking about the 1 mistake lead at the moment, isn't it? Around that 200 to 250 metre mark, the 1 mistake lead. That means that if you don't get your manoeuvre right, that'll be eaten up real quick and you will concede the lead.
Boundary tack.
Boundary tack. So Emirates Team New Zealand going to go all the way to the left and boundary tack. I was just again line the bow up with about the foil on Luna Rossa and see if there's any bearing change, forward or back. Looks pretty constant to me. Lead of 210 metres to Luna Rossa. Put that down to the start. Now we look at what happened, and it was Spittle just drove Emirates Team New Zealand out to the left, waited the chance. There was a simo tack, and they were right on the face of Emirates Team New Zealand. This is a replay of the start.
is a lot of communication coming off both those boats. Both Francesco Bruni down to Leeward. He's calling that. He's saying he has to attack, he has to attack. Jimmy Spittle's hearing that going, I'm on here. I'm going to take him out.
So we're still on the replay of the start, and it was a big moment. In the meantime, the boats now, or Luna Rossa has tacked. I think Emirates Team New Zealand probably have as well. It's all about now, can Luna Rossa force Emirates Team New Zealand to do an extra tack at the top of the course? We know the manoeuvres are expensive.
Slight advantage in speed aboard Emirates Team New Zealand, but only slight. And again, Jimmy Spittle in full coverage mode at the moment. If Luna Rossa win this race, they will be equal on points with Emirates Team New Zealand. With 4 points out of this regatta. That will mean a three-way tie. American Magic is out of this because they were beaten by Emirates Team New Zealand, but Jimmy Spittle can come from nowhere and still take the title off Team New Zealand in this World Series.
Go for it, yeah.
So I think there's good pressure straight ahead, I think.
Here the comms coming off Luna Rossa. Spittle, Australian accent, and across Francesco Bruni, who's on the leeward side. Pretty good advantage to Luna Rossa. Put that down to the start.
Stand by tack, boys. 3, 2, 1, go down.
Gee, there's a difference between the liveliness of these two boats compared with American Magic and
Well, they're racing.
UK.
They're racing. Prada's fallen.
Oh, they're going to get up though. Just right at the bottom. 8 knots of true wind speed.
But that's what we talk about. The one manoeuvre lead, the one mistake lead. Prada, slow right up, and that just gives Team New Zealand a sniff.
Looking like they've both got one more tack to go to this top mark.
See how that lead now decreases as Prada build back that speed. Remember, heading for gate 1, it's an upwind leg, first up here.
Building, boys, still too slow.
Still too slow, says Jimmy Spittle. Still too slow.
Keep building. That lead will be dropping down now about that slow and not happy.
I think that's the main reason.
Let's listen in.
I think we have been I think it was the pitch.
A big build here, big build. Got to be able to attack here.
Talking about the pitch of the boat aboard Luna Rossa. I think it was the pitch. That's what happened. Jesse Chook on the water.
Yeah, Luna Rossa had their trouble, but you'll notice that that lead wasn't decreased, and that's because Emirates Team New Zealand had their own troubles out there as well, which tells me there was a big patch of light air out there that they both fell into, so really difficult out the water at the moment.
And that's going back to what I was saying earlier. You saw Ineos Team UK at the top of the course. They were light, and it's the same thing. The top of this course is lighter than the bottom, making it very, very difficult to get around that top mark. And Emirates Team New Zealand have tacked on what they would have thought was the ley line, but looking at that last picture, it doesn't look like they're making it.
No. I think they need one more, Phil. They turn up now.
Certainly not on ley line, Emirates Team New Zealand. Luna Rossa ahead.
A lot of comms coming off Luna Rossa Prada there about the pitch of the boat being so crucial to their speed and their flight. So they're focusing a lot on that, a lot of chat, a lot of communication trying to get this thing around the course.
Just for those tuning in right now, Phil, never seen this before. Have they laid? Have they laid?
They're going into what you call a high mode, so they're just squeezing up, everything's slowing down, but that is a painful move.
Now the angle.
Well, the exit will be slow.
Turn is just so slow. They have dropped right off down to 10 knots.
It's all very well squeezing to the top mark like that, but you'll fall off the foils. You go into displacement mode, and it will be painful for Emirates Team New Zealand now to get back on the foils.
Wow, this is going to be a long, slow, painful build, much like we saw with Ineos Team UK. They're going straight across the course trying to build. They're not sailing towards the next mark. They're sailing away from it. And you've got that boundary there. If they can't get up on the foils before that boundary and jibe, they're going to have to do a painful, painful jibe, which is what they're opting for.
Wow, you do it.
They've jibed literally going nowhere at the moment. They've jibed going nowhere. Now they are pointing downwind.
And they've stopped. Wow.
Oh, well, I didn't think we'd be seeing that.
Well, this is a disaster for Emirates Team New Zealand, and they just might see Jimmy Spittle come through in the last race of the day and take it from underneath them. Pete Burling and Emirates Team New Zealand are going nowhere.
Well, what this is telling us is that all the boats, if they fall off these foils at the bottom of the wind range, it's a game changer, because boat on the foils, what have we got? They're doing close to 30 knots, 28 knots on Luna Rossa. Emirates Team New Zealand are just starting to build a little bit of speed now, but
Here's a real good one. I'm really interested to see at their speed that they have to hit before they can lift up onto the water. Jesse Tuke on the water, what are you seeing, brother?
Luna Rossa splashed down. They are off the foils now as well. They've gone through a jibe and they have fallen completely off. So they are now also going nowhere. It is tough out there, but both boats not foiling right now.
Peter Lester, you must think you're back about 7 America's Cups. We're finally back to that pace.
yeah, displacement boats. So now it's all coming back to me. I find this really bizarre, to be honest, that at this level, that the technology, and at some point in the America's Cup, we are going to have a really down speed race. And it could come down to who gets the geometry right to make the boat foil in 7 knots. Right now, they're all struggling in that condition.
This race is going to come down to who can get their boat on the foil next. That is a great nothing else. The winner of this race will be the one to get up that foiling lead. You're seeing Emirates Team New Zealand doing 12.5 knots there. Luna Rossa Prada just scratching 10. So here it is. Could be a long afternoon watching this play out.
Fantastic. The competitionalists will be loving it. And Emirates Team New Zealand, I think, is about to pop up. They're about to pop up. Luna also picking up speed.
What's hilarious is the boats are reaching across the course, not down until they get speed. And the New Zealanders now starting to pop up on the foil. 20 knots coming up on the roll. And we could see a bit of action down there.
It's coming right down to just 26 knots on another dive. Can they just dive off this at the moment? This is the race of the regatta right here. Can he do this dive? New Zealand, can he keep foiling?
And he's dropped off again. And he's gone sideways. Emirates Team New Zealand, they were halfway through the jibe.
23 knots though. He's got enough speed to fly. We're foils in the air. Both going.
This is bizarre, because the speed differential looks like Luna Rossa also now starting that wind that must have gone down to Emirates New Zealand. But look at the angle difference as the New Zealand boat comes up 30 knots. And Luna Rossa are jiving. That means they'll park the boat up again. So there's a line here where Luna Rossa is. Emirates Team New Zealand coming down at about 30 knots. And it's just the different geometry of what's going on. They are parked on Luna Rossa.
Look at the speed. Look at the speed differential here. Emirates Team New Zealand now on the hunt.
Emirates Team New Zealand have the next move. They're doing 30 knots. They're driving in the pressure. So they're saying, we're happy with where we are. There's wind here. Let's jive and take it. Can they land this jive?
I think what's happening is the wind is moving down the course again. There was obviously a big quiet spot. So the wind is coming from behind and maybe just coming around towards Cheltenham Beach. And once Burling and Tuke and Glenn Ashby get the boat on the foils, they managed to just stay in the bubble of wind, and now they're riding it down, and we have a lead change.
Look at the bottom of your screen. Left-hand side, you've got the speed differences there. The key here, Emirates Team New Zealand taking the lead, but doing 30 knots compared to the 12 of the Italians.
They blitz past Luna Rossa. Peter Burling, Glenn Ashby, Blair Tuke have got Tebehu Tai back on foils and back on track. That lead now increasing every single second as Luna Rossa finally finds some speed and some spray.
I find this bizarre, to be honest, in terms of the way the boats operate, because when that light spot developed at the top mark. It was Emirates Team New Zealand that shut down, trying to get round the mark. Then they parked it. But the light spot drifted down to Luna Rossa, and they parked it. But it was Emirates Team New Zealand that managed to get on the foils first, and they've shot into the lead. Luna Rossa now have picked up the pressure, and they're back up on their foils.
Jesse Chuk out on the water.
Yeah, they finally got the boat up, Luna Rossa, and they're looking quite good on that side of the course, but it is patchy, guys. I am looking up the course, and there are some massive holes, so it's all going to be about staying in the breeze and staying on the foils.
Yep. Forward. Now. All yours.
Emirates Team New Zealand, this was the moment. This is what we saw, and the boundary, look how close they had to take it to that boundary. Look how close they were as they tried to build speed, enough speed to get back on the foils.
380 metres is the lead. That is not a lot when it's 7-8 knots of breeze, and the danger of falling off these foils is very, very real.
Well, the game is about staying on the foils, obviously, and really where you point the bow of the boat in relation to the top mark almost becomes a little bit academic, because the ability to stay on the foils is everything, and we saw that so illustrated here, and it changes the complexity of how you'll play the game in light air.
Pete, can I also mention, we're only on the second leg. I feel like we've sailed a day's worth already in this race.
Well, Jesse pointed out on the track, there's big holes. That means light air, and it'll be heads out of the boat. You can see Glenn Ashby there now, starting, and Peter Burling looking out saying, hey, look at the wind on the water. Where are the dark spots?
Yeah, they're not looking at where they're going right now. They're looking at where the breeze is next. Everybody looking around. Only person concentrating there is Blair Took, who's flying this boat. Not a huge lead, jiving into the bottom gate.
See how much past the ley line they went, just so that when they come out, they can come out hot. So that means the bow is actually going to point closer to the wind, and that just gives them a bit of an insurance policy against touching down.
Glenn Ashby there with his hands on the wheel, waiting for Pete Burling to come back across.
And that's what I mean there, Scotty. They went well past the ley line. Now, Luna Rossa, because of the boundary, have to come closer to the ley line, and that'll make a slower angle coming back to the gate.
Now, there has been a course change and a penalty against Luna Rossa. It looks like a boundary penalty.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Luna Rossa went all the way to the boundary and encroached.
That doesn't really matter, though. That penalty will get wiped very quickly, just the way the boat's slow and the Emirates Team New Zealand's going fast. So the race is going to be finished. We heard from the race committee there saying the race will be finished after leg 4. So that's 2 more laps, up to the top, back to the bottom, finishing right where they are now.
Now, it's at the top of this course where the problems begin for these boats, where the light airs are.
This would have to be one of the most bizarre races I think I've ever seen. You know, from boats touching down to boats trying to go downwind and sailing, you know, at 90 degrees to the wind before they get on the foils. Now, Luna Rossa are struggling to get into the bottom mark gate.
They still have this penalty. The umpires aren't satisfied that they've slowed down, but you slow down on this, you fall off the foils. There it is, penalty complete.
Well, this is going to be an interesting manoeuvre too for Luna Rossa and their dual helmsman as they round the bottom mark, heading back up the top, and this is into some challenging water.
I'll give you some advice. These boats are harder to tack on the foils than they are to jibe. We're looking at the bottom of the wind range here. It's not going to be easy to get up to the top mark here as Luna Rossa Prada go into their tack, potentially in pressure.
Now it all comes down, as we have a look at this penalty again, it all comes down to who can pick their moments here, right? Phil, who can pick their moments, and that's not picking your moment.
To me, that is a professional foul. What they've done there is they've wanted to get past that red line to make sure they lay that bottom mark. They've sort of gone, hey, let's not worry about this boundary. Let's just make sure we lay, because we know another jibe is more expensive than taking that penalty right there. Professional foul.
Now, what I'm looking for upwind here is, and Emirates Team New Zealand now, see, just not foiling, and there'll be a big speed differential. Let's just go out to Jesse. Jesse, what are you seeing?
Yeah, big trouble on board Emirates Team New Zealand. They went into a big low-speed tack and they just sat it down for a long period of time here. So this thing has really squeezed up, and Luna Rossa up foiling. Emirates Team New Zealand now back on the foils, but it is close.
For all the weirdness of this race, it's the best race of the regatta. Lead changes. I think we're about to see another. We haven't seen this so far in racing.
Glenn Ashby saying, happy to hit him at the moment. They're going to attack when they attack. But this lead is closing down to 40 metres. Let's listen on board and see if they can take us through this whole situation.
Still watching for his board. He will go for boundary protection, so having to really lamp him
In this situation,
turning now, Pete, go down.
Luna Rossa attacks. Emirates Team New Zealand instantly.
Well, that's a big manoeuvre there. Who's going to touch down? Emirates Team New Zealand did a nice tack there. They actually sailed a little bit flat. Have they touched down? Yeah, Emirates Team New Zealand have touched down.
It's
Luna
okay.
Rossa are on their foils.
it doesn't look like it's a bad touchdown.
Just foiling now. Looks like Luna Rossa are just foiling a little easier in the... We're right down now at 7 knots.
I'm seeing pressure there in the left-hand side of the screen. So the boats are sailing into a little more pressure from my view.
Boy,
That's going to help.
Listen to the input of Glenn Ashby here. He's really, really active on board Emirates Team New Zealand in terms of the what's going on. They're in pressure now.
Coming. Pressure looks good on the bow, eh?
Where do we want to approach top left? I think we just need to get way wider out of these tacks, guys. Make sure we get down to like 90 if we're struggling. That one was about 60.
Boy, Ashby's on fire.
That's Pete Burling saying, let's get lower out of these tacks.
Let's get down to 90 out of these tacks and make sure we can stay foiling. So that is doing about 100 degrees turn, maybe even 110 degrees, and getting down to 90 degrees to the wind. Luna Rossa Prada out of there. This is it. Who can land their tack? Who can stay on their foils?
Yeah. Good tack, Emirates Team New Zealand that time.
And look how much lower they did come out on that one as well. See how they've changed a little bit. They're trying to build that speed, get out of the tack without losing too much.
You know what I reckon one of the keys here is when they go through these tacks, there's a dead spot when the sails change sides. And what you're seeing is when they go through that quiet spot, the mainsail trimmers alter the camber of the mainsail. So they go into the tack with the camber quite flat, and as they go through the dead spot, they actually make the sail quite deep to get power out of the tack. Very interesting trim.
Interesting move. Luna Rossa Prada have gone for attack. They're just trying to get away from them. They're saying, we want to sail in a different piece of water to you. We're going to make your life difficult. You need to make a decision. We're attacking. What are you going to do? They'll put the ball in their court here.
Right, all on Pete Burling now. The lead is extending for Emirates Team New Zealand. They've got a bit more boat speed as well. They're going to head out to the right side of the course. Prada now very keen to stay away from Burling. It's now a roll the dice situation.
Here's attack. And what it's about is now not minimising the tacks heading into the top mark gate. Emirates Team New Zealand now still in, 9 knots of wind speed, but on the foils. Not sure where they are in relation to ley line. No, they're miles off the ley line yet.
Yeah, there's a long way to go up.
Boy, they're wide angles the boats are sailing.
They have to be. They have to be wide to stay fast, and this game is closing up again.
Big wide angles and tacking angles, tacking through nearly 95, 100 degrees.
And when you talk about wide angles, that's wide angle to the wind direction.
True wind direction, yeah. Normally these things will tack through, 80 degrees. They're right out at 95 and coming out really deep out of tacks.
Prada's in some good breeze here, and they are closing that gap on this cross.
That's gone down to 80 metres now. Luna Rossa Prada trying everything they can to get back in this match. We've got 2 legs to go to the top gate, back down to the finish. We've got so much more racing to come and a lot of pressure manoeuvres to go through to get through to the end of this match and to see who will win this event.
Boundary coming up. Emirates Team New Zealand. They had to get through that tack before hitting the boundary. And the lead is still there for them, but only just. You can see that on the bottom left of your screen. But their boat speed now slowly picking up, trying to match Luna Rossa.
I think Luna Rossa have a slight edge upwind than Emirates Team New Zealand. Now, Luna Rossa's foils might be a little bit bigger in area, just making it a little bit more forgiving. And relatively now, the boats are bow to bow. Emirates Team New Zealand are on that port lay line and probably laying through.
It's a race. It's a race, Pete, to the exclusion zone. It's a race to the marks. Remember, first boat there has all the rights.
Yeah, 70 metres out is the circle. Luna Rossa still have a tack to do.
Luna Rossa with a tack. They're on starboard though. They're going to come back. If they can do a good tack, they could get a piece of Emirates Team New Zealand and put them in a hard spot where they'd have to go behind them and still make the mark. It looks good for Luna Rossa Prada here. Emirates Team New Zealand, can they lay, or are they going to throw another tack and go to that left turn?
Crossing by 3 was the call for Emirates Team New Zealand.
They've got to get there. They've got to get there first, Emirates Team New Zealand, and they do.
Yeah, brilliantly called. That's a fantastic lay line by Emirates Team New Zealand, because a late tack at that top mark would have been absolutely catastrophic, but there's still a leg to go.
There is, and it's a game of who can stay on your foils, who can jibe. It looks like the pressure is up slightly now and the boats are foiling a lot happier. So Emirates Team New Zealand, a 200-metre lead at gate 3, which is the last one before we hit it to the finish line.
It's a downwind sprint now. Let's go to Jesse Chuk out on Happy Gilmore.
Yeah, guys, what I'm looking for on this downwind is just how long they leave both those foils in the water. Obviously, we know it gives them stability, but it's obviously helping keep the boat up on the foils as well. So let's look out for who's just keeping those foils in as they are going through those turns on the downwind.
Well, Emirates Team New Zealand just dropping a little bit, but now they'll extend again. This is a drag race. One mistake, and that's it. Game over. 40 metres, 39. That's the lead for Emirates Team New Zealand as Luna Rossa goes through the jibe.
Oh, they've set it down.
Oh, no.
They've set it down. They've had a bad jibe.
Look at the Luna Rossa fans. They know what's just happened. They're back and they're popped up again. But that's all it takes.
Scotty, I think punters in New Zealand are going to get paranoid about touchdowns over this 36 America's Cup, because in this line here, who can fly the longest will win the race. And for me, big defining moment was at that top mark that Emirates Team New Zealand were able to cross and lay. And it was a very fine lay line called by Emirates Team New Zealand.
That was their all-in manoeuvre, and they pulled it off. They calculated that perfectly. But what we've got about 2 or 3 more jibes to the finish. At least 2, I would say. And we all know how hard these jibes are to land.
Fans in Auckland's Viaduct enjoying it, but there have been some hearts and mouths this afternoon. A seesawing affair out here on the sea.
Emirates Team New Zealand slowly taking that lead further and further away. 300 metres now, that is positive signs.
Yeah, in this line here, the boats are very evenly matched. I had Luna Rossa maybe just a click quicker. Whoa, this is not a great jibe. Are they going to touch down? Can they get back up to speed? We look for the bow to lift up out of the water. Look at the angle. That's a massive angle change.
He's
Looks
good.
like they've stuck it now as the speed builds. They could get, you see that big S action, so they get up to get the apparent wind forward, and as the boat speed clacks up above 30 knots, you can then point closer to the line. Scotty, probably one of the most bizarre races I've ever called.
Well, Pete, what's interesting, for people watching at home, Emirates Team New Zealand has actually turned into the wind to pick it up again before heading back downwind. That is going all the way through that manoeuvre.
Yeah, what it's about, the apparent wind, so that's the angle that the boat is feeling. You've got to keep that forward. And until the speed builds, you cannot rotate the bow of the boat away from the wind. Hence why you see that big S on the water.
I'm telling you now, this is not over yet.
No, it's not.
This is not over yet.
It is 1 and into the finish for both boats here. Who can land their last jibe and win? Emirates Team New Zealand, 200-metre lead. If they can go through this jibe and keep it on the foils, it is game over. Good night, Regatta 1.
They're heading out to the left-hand side as they see it heading downwind. They will jibe once towards the finish line. Luna Rossa, Prada, Pirelli heading out to the other side of the course. One jibe, they'll head in. They'll be coming in on different angles. Who's picked it right?
Yeah, well, watch this one, because I think New Zealand will certainly go just beyond the red line, the lay line, And just watch the difference in mainsail trim as they go through this dead spot when they're directly downwind. Glenn Ashby, do the magic. You can see the sail just got a little bit fuller. And is it going to touch down? No, she's back on the foils.
Pressure back all right.
They've ripped a good jibe on the final job to the finish. From there, they should be able to lay through. Luna Rossa still have a jibe to do as they go through their one.
I think it's too little too late. The lead down to 40 metres, but Luna Rossa Prada going through their last jibe, dropping to 20 knots. That's it. I think we've found our winner.
Emirates Team New Zealand closing in on the finish. Jimmy Spittle hasn't given up yet, but the course is running out. Peter Burling and Emirates Team New Zealand have given us all conniptions, and they've taken the World Series regatta.
I'm exhausted.
That's the wheel there, come on.
I'm exhausted.
Now just carry on straight. Just we'll foil out this way a little bit.
Well, that was hilarious in some ways, but you know, the teams would have learned a lot today from when you're looking forward in the regatta. I think today would be the best learning, the learning that's been taken and the data that's been taken today will be massive when we look at the rest of the America's Cup.
We have been taken through the full spectrum of emotions today. All fans, whether you're here for Ineos, whether you're here for Luna Rossa, whether you're here for American Magic, or whether you're here for Emirates Team New Zealand, you have had a day out on the water today. Here are the results. Emirates Team New Zealand win by a point from American Magic. Luna Rossa in third place. Ineos Team UK winless in this regatta. That will mean that Emirates Team New Zealand are top seed for the first race tomorrow. They will take on Ineos, American Magic, Luna Rossa.